Financial Symposium's webcast will begin now. Please submit questions with the Questions to All Panelists window. We will address questions live at the end of the session. Otherwise, we will follow up via email. With that, please welcome moderator Nat Burgess.
Welcome to the Market Spotlight Social Marketing Webinar, produced by the World Financial Symposiums, or WFS. WFS Technology and Finance Conferences around the world. I have to chair two of this year's events, Growth and Exit Strategies conferences in London and Seattle, and I'll tell you firsthand they were hugely valuable. Please note that the next Growth and Exit Strategies conference will take place June 5th in New York. Check WFS.com for more information on events. At this event, we have a packed agenda today. We're a special report from Quorum Research covering the trends in social media marketing. And again, we're looking at the technology driving change in marketing. We're going to have these with two thought leaders in the space, serial entrepreneurs who are currently building companies in the sector. And focused on this market is absolutely critical for entrepreneurs today for several reasons. First, there's a lot of activity in the sector, as you'll see, billions and billions of dollars being spent on acquisitions of companies in the space, in investment, billions in IPOs. Good companies at high valuations. Jason from the Core Group will go into detail on specific transactions and trends. Second, it's critical because the world has been turned upside down by recent changes in consumer behavior, increasing the power of the chief marketing officer and putting marketing on center stage in IT budgets. And important to you, audience, all of this disruption is creating opportunities for today's entrepreneurs to build tomorrow's billion-dollar companies. We don't have to go farther than our favorite high school dropout who just pocketed $250 million selling Tumblr to Yahoo. Congratulations. Years ago, I helped start a company called Postcard Software, and at that time, the internet was new to consumers. There were search engines to help people navigate. If you didn't have it, you're going to struggle to find useful content. Was shipping out millions of CDs to help people get connected, and at the same time, everyone was buying screensavers. Remember the phone toasters? Our vision was to guide consumers to brands using screensavers. For off-road vehicles, you could get the Jeep screensaver, and then if you clicked on the red Jeep driving across your screen, you would go straight to the Chrysler website. Look at a cumbersome, labor-intensive way to get people to websites. It was one of the ways, and it worked. We had a good run. But with technology, we can do so much more. Since that time, I've spent over 20 years as a lawyer and investment banker, managed 100 transactions, $1 billion in deal value, but I've never seen the excitement of identifying a market opportunity and building business to exploit it. And in my experience, the best big opportunities is find gaps in the market and then imagine how they will be filled by the technologies of tomorrow. In this event, I will interview two social marketing company founders to find how they see the gaps and how those gaps are being filled. Social media marketing gap, we need to make two sets of people happy, the consumers and the MO. To make them happy, we have to engage them and get to their lives. And in some cases, we also have to turn them into advocates for our brands, and we'll talk about that later in our interview with Brian Razak. For the C, we have to sell more stuff, and our guest later in the program, Brenton Farmer, has some very interesting thoughts on how to do that. But the consumers are spending most of their internet time on activities that are not easily monetized. Someone hits Google to learn about the latest gadget, they're receptive to ads on that particular topic, but that's a slice of most people's online time. When you were looking at photos of Aunt Edna's new dog on Facebook, you're in the market for dog food. That's one of an early skeptic of the fake IPO. And in fact, I think before they went public, I was on the radio with Geek, some of these challenges to the Facebook model. What do you know? The skeptics were right in that case. I was in time, but we would have been buying AOL or Yahoo stock back then. But basically, the lesson is that we spend our time online connecting with people we already know for reasons that have nothing to do with shopping. As monetize that? For me, these factors add up to a disaster, an internet of chaos, unpredictable trends, clunky advertising, and marketing spend. How can companies regain control of the mind of their customers? The question that individuals across the globe are racing to answer. And I'm fortunate to have two of those people later on in our webcast today. But before we get to the panel, I will turn the presentation over to Jason Stebley, an analyst with Quorum's research team. Jason is spending some time with Gartner, with the Index, and former clients in order to get a handle on current social marketing deal trends. Jason.
As you've described, social is part of a nexus of disruptive forces transforming the technology landscape, along with cloud, mobile, and big data. Of course, these trends are mutually exclusive. For instance, social networking is generating enormous sums of data across millions of mobile devices, all of which are connected in the cloud. But each have been individually identified as leading drivers of M&A activity as tech companies build out their solutions to penetrate each segment. Social has become a big part of the enterprise IT lexicon, in part due to the rise of the CMO, who Gartner will spend more on IT by 2017 than CTOs, and how it cuts across several core technology segments. Quorum Index, a comprehensive valuation measure of all different types of technology companies, social marketing is a horizontal product that has application in nearly every B2B or B2C industry. Marketing technique, primarily executed through the internet, often at consumers with the support of various IT services. Social influence also extends somewhat over valuations in those segments of the Quorum Index. CMOs are already major influencers of IT spend, and in many cases have final purchasing power over enterprise IT systems such as e-commerce sites and Salesforce automation suites. Following the forces transforming the technology landscape, senior executives have made acquiring social, mobile, and analytical capabilities their top 3 priorities over the next few years. With them already in the door from installations of now legacy CRM applications, enterprise software providers like Oracle, Salesforce, IBM, and many others have followed suit. Sites themselves, who are actively acquiring functionality to increase their relevance to marketers, and we are in the midst of a classic M&A consolidation phase. In 2012, we counted roughly 45 deals, up 33 in 2011, involving primarily a social marketing, networking, or related tech target. So 2013 is on pace to exceed 2012's total. With 23 transactions already on the books, we expect easily 50-plus deals to close out the year. I've put together a simple social marketing topography. Based on the deal flow we've tracked, most social marketing transactions can be characterized as belonging to one of 3 categories. First, at the core are the social networks, where marketers are attempting to engage would-be consumers, including Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, as well as special interest sites such as TripAdvisor and Yelp. We have the social marketing automation companies such as Buddy Media and Virtue that help marketers engage customers on those social networks. And this would also include social customer experience management vendors, with companies coming from the call center world of customer service. And are the social monitoring and analytics providers such as Radian6 and Collective Intellect that are helping marketers understand what's going on in social networks and demonstrate marketing effectiveness. At the top, placed Oracle and Salesforce, who have been piecing together all-encompassing marketing solutions that include analytics and automation in a single platform through M&A. We'll talk more about them later, but first let's dissect valuations in the social marketing segments. And valuations of companies involved in social marketing tend to outperform companies in comparable sectors of the Quorum Index. Starting with the social networks, we compiled the valuations of companies like Facebook, LinkedIn, TripAdvisor, and many more to come up with a social media index that compares very favorably to Quorum's Internet's peer index with its broader measure of search, e-commerce, and news sites valuations. Although the sectors share a similar range of valuations, the median sales multiple of social media networks are significantly higher than their counterparts in the Internet subsector. This is not surprising given the wave of social transactions we've been witnessing over the last 2 to 3 years. Networks like Facebook have been building their value by acquiring the tech and talent to add functionality that attracts more users and gets them to linger longer on their sites, increasing their relevance to marketers. Facebook, which has been one of the most active tech buyers since 2010, built some of its most popular features this way, including its news feed, which it acquired in one of its first transactions way back in 2009 of FriendFeed. More continue to build out its social sharing capabilities with its billion-dollar acquisition of Instagram. Other networks have also been turning to M&A to add features that increase the amount of time eyeballs are spending on their websites. Just this month, LinkedIn added Alfonso Labs, makers of the popular news publishing and distribution tool Pulse, for an estimated $90 million, as it looks to ramp up content distribution. In 2012, it also picked up the online presentation service SlideShare for about $110 million. Twitter has been busy adding content capabilities with acquisitions of music discovery tools like We Aren't Haunted and video sharing app maker Vine. This segment has been the acquisition of special interest social networks by other online properties. TripAdvisor, the travel review website, is probably the most emblematic of this trend. Acquiring social photo application Teeny Post and travel social networks Wonderfly and Where I've Been over the last 2 years. An extended trend includes e-commerce sites such as Amazon and OpenTable acquiring special interest social networks that add relevance to their customers. Finally, social networks are helping old internet companies get younger. I'm talking, of course, about Yahoo's billion-dollar purchase of Tumblr, the popular multimedia microblogging site. But Yahoo, in its official press release, promised not to screw up, referring to its past failed acquisition of the photo-sharing service Flickr. Although it's expensive for Tumblr's insignificant revenues, the acquisition is an important one for Yahoo as it tries to introduce itself to the social-first, under-30 generation that has little attachment to a homepage or Yahoo's search engine. Shifting to marketing automation, these are the companies that help marketers manage their social media presence and include the likes of Salesforce, Hootsuite, and many more. These are really all about building a larger funnel to feed the CRM. We are finding that earnings multiples of these companies compare pretty evenly with those tracked in the Quorum Index's CRM subsector, posting just about equal median and top options and a more favorable floor. A key has been of consumer experience management and customer relationship management vendors to get social, with companies like IBM, Oracle, Salesforce, LivePerson, SDL, and many more buying social marketing companies. Some key include Intuit's $425 million purchase of Demandforce at 11.4 times sales, Marketo, actually public marketing technology vendors' only acquisition to date of Crowd Factory, and Adobe's $400 million acquisition of Efficient Frontier at 5.3 times sales in 2011. With increasing social marketing, the need to monitor and demonstrate the effectiveness of those campaigns is also greater. Not surprisingly, this has touched off another M&A run on companies with these capabilities. Based on published and estimated transaction multiples, social analytics companies are being valued at a premium compared to their BI brethren, gaining a median sales price of 5 times revenue versus just 2.6 for BI. Interest in social analytics companies is wide and varied. Facebook and Twitter have both bought social analytic capabilities to help demonstrate their relevance to marketers. And many marketing automation platforms have subsumed analytics providers as part of their core platforms. Some of the data that helped set the standard for these high values include IBM's $500 million acquisition of Tea Leaf Technologies last year at 10 times revenue. With that acquisition, IBM is extending its smarter commerce initiative to provide marketers and customer service professionals with real-time automated insights across all internet channels on customer behavior. Another deal that set a high valuation mark includes Salesforce's purchase of Radian6 for $326 million at an estimated 6.9 times sales. Of course, we can't talk about what Salesforce has been doing in the social marketing without mentioning Oracle. The two enterprise software makers have spent nearly $2.5 billion in this space since March 2011 to compete for more of the CMO's IT budget with complete multi-channel marketing platforms. Oracle social marketing automation to its platform in May of last year with Virtue for $325 million, which was followed by Salesforce, who picked up Buddy Media for $689 million at 20 times revenue. Both also added analytics capabilities through acquisitions, with Salesforce getting Radian6 and Oracle picking up Involver and Collective Intellect over the last 24 months. As Oracle's billion-dollar acquisition of Elcom made clear, these strategies are not simply about social. It's about attaching a larger funnel to their respective CRMs. For now, Oracle and Salesforce are out in front, but there are signs Microsoft might slowly be taking steps to boost dynamics. And purchased social media monitoring provider NetBreeze, which it plans on merging with Marketing Pilot. Although they have more work to do, it will be interesting to see what Microsoft and the other major CRM providers like SAP, Sugar, and NetSuite do to catch up with Salesforce and Oracle. For now, that's it from research. Be sure to tune in to Quorum's monthly webinars on the second Tuesday of each month for regular updates of all software and tech and activity. Back to you, Nat.
Great report, fascinating. Lots of money moving around, lots of instances of where value has been built over the last couple of years, and to see big numbers being put up on the board by a lot of entrepreneurs. But as we all know, what really matters today for people building companies is strategy for building value going forward. And to really dig deeper into that, into the market and into some ideas on where the gaps are, we were lucky to be joined by two entrepreneurs who have started companies who are building value in this space. And they're not going to talk about their companies as much as they're going to talk about their vision for what's missing from the marketplace and how they see solutions evolving around those gaps.
So we have Brian, who's founder and CEO of Social Toaster. Brian, thanks for joining us today.
No, it's fun to get the opportunity.
Discussing, it's more interesting for us to look ahead and figure out where the next generation of M&A deals are going to come from, and really to do that we have to explore where the next generation of companies are coming from. I know we've spent a lot of time today looking back and talking about recent transactions that have made the headlines, but let's look out 6 months, 18 months, 12 months into the future. And I think you're uniquely qualified to do that because you're building a business that's addressing some of those issues. So, Brian, as a starting point, in your view, what's missing from the social marketplace today from a commercial standpoint?
Well, I think to better that question, I think it's important to look at what, when we talk about technology, we talk about generations of technology. And when we talk about social as a space, I think it's appropriate to think about the space in that same way. Sort of you have your first generation social tools, which really deal with more monitoring, understanding what people are saying using these different social channels. So your example would be like a Radian 6. You then have your sort of second generation tools, which are really more focused on the engagement within a specific channel. So trying to make your Facebook experience more interactive, for example. And so you've got tools that live in that space. And now where we currently are, or where the gap is, or where there are companies that are trying to sort of fill it is station. And it's still centers around the concept of engagement, but it's beyond what a second generation tool would trust, which is, your fan is coming to Facebook and now we want them to do something there. The challenge has been that, at least this is how most people are looking at it. I actually will take it a step further, but just kind of defining the space. How do you get people to come back? That's what most of the tools that are coming into this space right now are trying to address, is that it's not enough just to get somebody to come and become a fan and want to, be on Facebook or follow you, but your second generation tried to make it so that when you first signed up, they could have something to do or could interact with you more, or you kind of built apps within your Facebook channel. But
sure,
overall,
that dynamic of just becoming a fan, it's sort of like signing a petition, and then you never hear from it again until maybe you read about something in the paper, which is very different from engagement, isn't it?
So that's where a lot of these third generation tools are coming into play, is around this broader concept of like, how do you consistently get them to come back to your channel? But the larger gap, and where I would say this is where now sort of third to fourth generation tools come into play, is looking at it holistically and really trying to take this audience and this asset that you thought, which is your following, and how do you mobilize them? How do you monetize them? How do you actually get to ROI? It's almost like it's very analogous to the .com boom days, where a lot of companies and businesses invested so much in getting hits and eyeballs, and everyone just thought revenue would magically come, and that's kind of where we are with social. That a lot of these first and second generation tools were focused on just and then kind of monitoring the social stream. But now, and there was an assumption that if we built audience that ROI would come, and it's obviously not been the case. And so the gap now, and where the tools are coming into play, is how do we how do we take that audience and how do we now move them to where we're getting an actual ROI? And there are a lot of ways to accomplish that. Monetization of the actual audience itself. That's one area that companies are going to be exploring more aggressively. The second one is relationship with advertisers and sponsors, and how do we take this on and how to build value for advertisers and sponsors and build a more rewarding and valuable proposition for advertisers and sponsors so that they will want to pay to be associated with the brand. That's another opportunity. And then driving action. We have this asset. You've built up fans. You've built up followers. So, how do we actually get them to do something? How do we actually show that there's that's the most important.
And that's the one I really want to focus on, because I've been working on the other things, but what's intriguing is you're doing, and that is, if they're who likes a brand, you're going out to them and you're saying, hey, you like the brand, tell the world, be our advocate, and that, in theory, would have a hugely viral effect if it works, because people do tend to influence each other more than brands influence people. But is that basically the dynamic that you're talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. It's how do you build advocacy? How do you create, I go back to this issue of engagement. How do you get people that are fans, that are followers, they raise their hand, they said they like you, now what? How do you do more? And how can you build a stronger relationship with them? So that's all the tools are coming out. And that's where, when we talk about 2 years from now, what are we going to be looking at? We're going to be looking at a landscape that, you hear a lot about this concept of social spam. You've got a lot of companies that are attacking it. You've got, known players like Salesforce and Oracle making big investments to try to bridge that gap. You've got, companies like ours that are looking at ways to help you more readily and effectively mobilize that audience and drive to real action. Have analytical tools that do a better job of bridging the gap between your fans and followers and transactions actually occurring. That's really where we're deficient, and that's where innovation is happening.
Big investments by Oracle, et cetera, Microsoft buying Yammer, and we were talking to us today. But meanwhile, we've got David Karp, high school dropout, founds Tumblr, gets bought by Yahoo for $1 billion, puts $250 million in his pocket. Congratulations to him, but that's just an indication of the power of the participants in this social sphere. It's not enough for the big guy just to throw money at it, and that's why I find what you're doing so it's to turn the fans into an army of advocates who do more than just buy the product or watch the games. They actually get out there and recruit more fans and feel good about it, and everyone becomes part of an ecosystem that's virtuous.
Yeah, and if you're touching on kind of the problem we're trying to address, it's interesting because that, in itself is not a new problem within the social space. The challenge has been, though, how do you effectively address that problem at scale? And that's really sort of where innovation is happening, and obviously without tooting our own horn, that's one of the things that we're really focused on is the scalability of addressing this problem. People have talked about advocates. They've talked about building up a fan program and an audience, but up until now, brand managers, social media managers have not had a good way, have had good tools to do this at scale, and that's really the secret.
Brian Razak, thanks so much for joining us today. We enjoyed hearing your thoughts.
Thanks for the opportunity. It was a pleasure to be on the show.
Gears now and move over to Brent Farmer. We've talked a little bit here about turning fans and customers into advocates. Now we're going to talk about leveraging shared interests to create shared groups on the internet. We're pleased to have Brent Farmer on the webinar with us today. Brent, thanks for joining us.
Hi, for having me.
By way of introduction, Brent has been a client twice. He was an early pioneer in the contact center world when that was how you reached out to customers. And his most recent company, Interactive Softworks, was acquired by USAN. And he's been thinking through some of these problems of social engagement and bigger problems of of social interests. And really, where I want to start with this, Brett, is if we look at the current landscape of social and how people are thinking about it and trying to monetize it, in your view, what's missing?
The existing social networks have largely evolved around managing connections that you already have to people in life. So they're essentially large connection portfolios. The difficulty with those portfolios is that you don't really understand the nature of the relationships within them. So you have people in portfolios that represent your family, that represent people you went to school with, that represent people that you casually met at a party but don't really remember. And as a result, you don't understand the nature of the relationships that make up that portfolio. So these social networks are largely an archaeological representation of the people you've already met or already know. And they're also focused on describing life that has already occurred. And that when you look at it in terms of what's going on in the landscape today, you have this mass movement to smart devices and mobile. And that movement is significant for the reasons that we all understand, which is, people are moving from the desktops and the notebooks out to these smaller form factors. But hand in hand with that, the big gaping hole, the sinkhole, I think, is that the way people are consuming information on those devices has changed. We've gone from a model where we're describing pre-existing relationships and pre-existing behaviors and content to one where we're trying to consume information as we're living life. If the social network were instead focused on those activities and events in real life, I think the best way to understand somebody is by watching what they do and who they do it with. So it's not that relationships aren't important. Relationships are critically important, but it's that the value is in understanding what drives the relationship, and what drives the relationship are the interests. That's a bold idea. This idea that interests are really what can drive monetization and drive new connections and drive a more dynamic social realm. What's in the market that validates that view? I think the biggest thing is the consumers' wholesale adoption of mobile technology. I mean, that's the first piece. There's been this. You look at the number of mobile and smart devices out there and how quickly the desktop world is dissipating. And then you go and look at the type of applications that are being downloaded. I think 45 billion applications have been downloaded, in 2012. And you look at the nature of what those applications are. They're not applications that are built around relationships and connections. They're applications that are really built around specific interests, whether it's an interest that relates to, my travel itinerary, or an interest that relates around, gas prices, or ordering a pizza. When you look at them, they're largely utilities based upon what I'm doing in life now and what matters to me as I move through the world. And I think that's the biggest indication. It's also one of the big challenges to marketers, because if you look at the total number of apps that are downloaded, it's an enormous amount of fragmentation in terms of how a marketer is going to reach those audiences. How many, trip itinerary applications are there? How many banking applications are there? So the consumers themselves, I think, are driving the move towards interest-driven activities and away from dedicated computing time as we've all thought about it for so long.
Okay, well, Brent, that's interesting. I think that does validate this idea that people are actually interacting around shared interests. Crystal, again, we're trying to anticipate the technologies that are going to change the landscape, that are going to result in the next Tumblr, the next billion-dollar Yahoo acquisition. So if we were to forward 2 years, 5 years, how does this desire on the part of consumers to interact around shared interests, how's that going to actually look in the marketplace?
that the software that we use is going to be built around augmenting life in the here and now rather than focused on dedicated computing time in the ways that we've always known it. And the benefit of that is that we understand, by understanding interests in the here and now, because we play all of these different roles in life. We play the role of the business person, we play the role of the father, we play the role of the friend. What we care about and what we're doing in the here and now changes based upon what role and what activity we're engaged in. So if we get this idea that people are moving towards mobile devices, but they're also changing the way that they're consuming information as a way to augment their life in the here and now, the computing networks will be built around the interests and putting what you're doing in the context of what you care about. From a marketing perspective, that's a great thing because it allows marketers to focus directly on what people are doing and care about it. I think one of the misnomers of customer engagement is the idea that businesses reach out to customers, when in reality we're moving to a model where the customer engages the company. And so when the customer engages the company in the context of an interest, the company is much better prepared to take actionable and valuable steps based upon that interaction when it's most likely to run something that's beneficial to both parties.
And I think that's key in what you're saying is beneficial to both parties. There's a lot to think about here. This idea of augmented reality going beyond the current definition, and the idea of this taking a shape that benefits the consumer, gives them what they want, but also gives marketers new tools to get into that consumer base. Thanks so much for joining us today. I know you came straight from a board meeting, and we really appreciate you making time. Thank you.
Brian and Brent for those insightful discussions. We're just about out of time. If you have any questions, we will get back to you by email. But we have two really exciting events coming up in June. First, we're proud to be bringing the next Growth and Nexus Strategies Conference to New York on June 5th. We have an exciting group of speakers and analysts from Works, Graycroft, Bragle Sagemount, Revel Partners, Seaport Capital, and more. Plus, Klaus Schausser, current strategist and founder of Appfolio, and married behind GoToMyPC and GoToMeeting, will be keynoting the event. Then, 25th at 10 a.m. UK time, join us for our next Market Spotlight webcast focused on media and tech M&A. Now, more about these events and to register, visit www.ws.com. Thank you for your attendance.